Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the 60th episode of the Triboro Podcast. It's going to be a somber one, but
It's the eulogy
it,
episode.
it is the eulogy episode. But as the famous Dr. Seuss once said, "Don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened." Um, the Mets were eliminated from the 2024 postseason by the Dodgers last night. The NLCS in 6 games. Uh, yeah, it's still fresh, you know. Um, like the wound was open last night, but I got some bandaging up until this point, but it's still there. Still hurts every time you move. But yeah, it stinks. But I don't even know where to begin. Uh, I guess we'll recap the series as a whole before getting into the eulogy aspect of it. So this series as a whole, looking as like from back here, this was a pretty bad series from an entertainment standpoint, at least.
Yeah.
Every win was a blowout. There were any close. The first lead change in this series happened last night.
Which that's absurd. Like that's just
Yeah.
crazy.
Like quickly go over game one, Mets lost 9-0. Game two, Mets won 7-3. That was probably the closest.
And even then,
Then
the Dodgers only scored in like the later innings, right? So
right,
like
the
for the
Mets scored
most of the
six
game.
runs in the first 2 innings. They were down 6-0 by the third inning. It was like
Yeah.
game three, Mets lost 8-0. Game four, Mets lost 10-2. Game five, Mets won 12-6, and then game six, Mets fell 10-5. So it was a pretty bad series. It's obviously I was living and dying with every pitch, but this was a bad series overall. It was not entertaining. It was not exciting. The games were over by the fifth inning half the time. But just a quick game by game recap, I guess. Game one quickly became a laughter. Kota Senga just didn't have it. He was brutal. Walked 4 guys in less than 2 innings, allowed 3 runs. David Peterson came in relief later, allowed another 3 runs, and then Jose Buto was kind of hung out to dry, gave up another 3 runs. The Mets got 3 hits. Jack Flaherty was able to pitch 7 innings. They never really touched the bullpen. They never really touched the bullpen this entire series as a whole. They only saw the big leverage guys last night, really. Uh, Game two was complete opposite. Mets got a lot early thanks to a Mark Vientos grand slam. Uh, yeah, this one was just another whatever. Sean Manaea pitched all right. 5 innings, 2 hits, 2 earned runs, 4 walks, 7 strikeouts. But again, this is another game that was kind of done early. Not done early, but the Dodgers tried to scratch and claw back, but they never really got there. It was a bullpen game for the Dodgers, and the Mets just completely unloaded. Game three, this was probably one of the more frustrating games as a whole, because I feel like you field a ground ball in the second inning and completely changes the entire landscape of the game. Luis Severino just, I don't know. I mean, he went 4 2/3, 3 hits, 2 runs, none of them earned, 4 walks, 3 strikeouts. Like, not terrible, but again, uh, he also didn't help himself. Not fielding about like 2 ground balls in the second inning.
Because it's also a thing of when you allow guys to get on. Like you had, was it 4 walks or 3 walks?
4 walks,
You let 4 guys on just from walks and how many hits?
3. So that's
Three,
seven base
seven
runners.
base runners. Like not errors are bound to happen, but you're just opening up the possibilities for errors to happen. So it's a thing like,
Absolutely.
yeah, they're unearned runs, but at the same time, it's like,
Yeah. So that one, and then the Mets offense just couldn't get anything going against Walker Buehler, who had his best stuff the entire season.
And it wasn't
Uh,
even particularly
it
close.
wasn't close, no. Game 4, Jose Quintana on the bump. Just a bad matchup to begin with. Jose Quintana, a guy that relies on chase and hitting the corners, against a team that does not chase. So, from the get-go, just a bad matchup. But Jose Quintana went 3 and a third innings, 5 hits, 5 runs, 4 walks, 2 strikeouts. Again, the Mets offense got nothing going against Yamamoto and the rest of the Dodgers bullpen. This was really the only game where you saw a lot of the high leverage guys. Evan Phillips pitched, Blake Trinan pitched, but really couldn't get anything going there. They had their chances. 0 for 10 if runners in scoring position. 0 for 10. Leave 12 men on base. Game 5, another laughter. Mets got off to a 8-0 lead by the third inning. And then it was a 10-0 lead. 10-2 lead by the fourth inning. So just completely flipping the script. They completely bulldozed Jack Flaherty, tagging him for 8 runs. And just a complete flip from what we've seen from the offense. And then, of course, Game 6. A frustrating one. Definitely a frustrating way to end things. Sean Manaea just didn't have it. That's really what it comes down to. He only lasted 2 innings, 6 hits, 5 runs, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts. What are you going to do? Again, Mets had their chances. 2 for 9 from scoring position, 13 left on base.
I just wanted to talk on Manaea. Why do you think that was, that he didn't have it?
I think he just hit a wall.
I agree.
This is the most he's pitched ever.
It was his 36th start of the year.
Right. I think that's the case for all these guys. I think you look at this rotation on paper, and it's a gift that they made it this far. You know, Luis Severino, horrible year last year, barely pitched the last, call it what, 3-4 years?
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think since
Jose
like 2019,
Quintana. Right. Jose Quintana missed half of last year, didn't pitch a lot. An older guy who relies on chase, doesn't throw hard. Sean Manaea was barely a starter last year, didn't pitch as much. You know, you add David Peterson, bad year last year, missed the first half of this year of hip surgery. You add all that together, and it's guys throwing the most innings they've had ever, or the most innings they've thrown in quite a while. And it was bound to happen that they were just going to hit a wall, and they just didn't have it. And that was this series. That's really the only thing that you have to say. Like, I know it's frustrating because guys didn't come through or didn't give you length, but it's a lot for these guys that haven't pitched in a while, and it's the deepest a lot of these guys have ever gotten into the playoffs. So again, the most they've ever pitched in a singular year. I mean, I don't remember the last time Jose Quintana was in the playoffs and got this deep. I mean, Severino made the ALCS in
22, yeah.
17? Oh, and 22, yeah.
They also made it in... I think he pitched in a relief role in 2019.
Okay.
I want to say he did.
So Severino was really one of the only guys that's ever pitched this far into the playoffs. But even with that, he's a completely different pitcher, coming off his worst season as a major leaguer. And then, you know,
I was just going to say,
Yeah,
for Severino in 2022, 11 innings pitched in the postseason. 2019, 8 1/3. 2017, 16.
Right. So Severino's the only guy that's only pitched deep into the playoffs. But again, he was a completely different pitcher back then, coming off, you know, a really bad season. So you just add all that together. It's just they hit a wall. That they left everything out on the field. They had nothing left to give, really. Um, all the dashboard lights were going on. They they're running on fumes.
Hey,
You
my
know,
check tire pressure light has been on for how long? And it has
exactly.
not been an issue, so.
Right. So that's what happens. But just some overall
Can
notes
I say one thing?
as a
Because
whole. Yeah,
I
go
was going to
for it.
say, I just feel like this team as a whole wasn't built for a deep October run.
It wasn't. Look at the bullpen.
Like,
Look, look at the guys in that bullpen. I mean, you have some like postseason guys. In theory, Phil Maton, but he had a terrible postseason. Before that, of course, he was nails. Ryan Stanek, he's really the only guy who has been this deep into the playoffs. He stepped up big time.
I mean, you could say Ottavino.
Ottavino wasn't even on the roster. He didn't pitch.
Sh-
He never pitched in a
Completely forgot
playoff
about
game.
that. Completely forgot about that. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're right.
he never touched the mound of a postseason game. But then you have Jose Buto, who's essentially a rookie. Danny Young, who was mop-up duty. Tyler McGill, mop-up duty. Reed Garrett had his first full season as a major leaguer. Edwin Diaz, I believe this is the deepest he's ever made into the playoffs. I don't think he was in the playoffs with the Mariners.
No, because wasn't the whole thing the Seattle? It took them, like, until 2021 to break
Yeah,
the record or whatever.
right. So, but Diaz, to his credit, he showed up in this series, albeit his struggles beforehand. But besides that, no one else. Who am I missing? Danny Young, yeah, Kodai Senga, first time in the playoffs.
And even then, also with just the starters, too, as you mentioned, they either didn't have experience in the postseason or they kind of just were guys that you couldn't count on to be rested or not be fatigued when they got to the playoffs. And I'm even trying to think on the offense, like, outside of JD Martinez, who do you have that had that, like, established, and Lindor, outside of those two guys, who do you
Yeah,
have that had that established postseason pedigree?
that's it. Brandon Nimmo, second time making the postseason. Mark Vientos, first time. Alonso, first time. Jesse Winker, I'm not too
Oh, no,
sure. I
still
want to
Alonso's
say.
second time.
Yeah, did I say first? I
You
meant
said
second.
yeah.
My bad. Jesse Winker, I think he made it with the Brewers last year. Before that, I'm not sure. Starling Marte, I think he was on that Pirates team. Forgot what year that was that made the playoffs. Tyrone Taylor, he was with the Brewers last year. Jeff McNeil, second time. Francisco Alvarez, first full time. And then, obviously JD Martinez, Jose Iglesias, who made the playoffs when he was almost a rookie last time. Then Harrison Bader, who of course was with the Yankees in 2022.
Jesse Winker, was his third postseason. He was with the
Third
Reds in
postseason.
2020.
Okay.
Starling
Oh,
Marte, this was
2020.
his 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, sixth postseason. He had 3 with
Okay.
the Pirates, 1 with the Marlins, 2 with the Mets.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, I mean,
But his numbers are not good in the postseason.
yeah. So really, you only had JD Martinez, who was not good, unfortunately. I think he's another guy that just hit a wall. He gave everything he had. But quickly just get into some stats to really kind of paint the picture on what went wrong this series. The Mets pitching had a 7.10 ERA. That's it right there. You can put it on the offense. You can say what you want about guys not getting the big hit because they had their chances. I'm not discrediting that. They had their chances, especially last night. Could have been a completely different game. 7.10 ERA.
I feel like there's
Your
so many.
starter.
Or, you
Yeah, go for it.
say your number on the starters.
Okay. Yeah, the starters had a 7.65 and only 20 innings pitched. Six
Yeah.
games, 20 innings.
That's only this series.
That's only this series.
I feel like there were so many games where, because Senga went what, 1 inning,
Inning and a third.
inning and a third. So just call it 19 innings through 5 games. That's less
Yeah.
than 4 a start. I just feel like there were so
Right.
many starts where it's like Severino, it's like 4 2/3, 2 runs. You're like almost happy about
Yeah, it's like,
that.
okay,
Like you're almost
fine.
like, this is the best start of the goddamn postseason. Where it's just
Yeah.
like, that's not gonna win. If that's the best start that you're getting out of a starter, that Minai had a really good start. I know that game too, but if
Even then, he only went 5 innings.
yeah, like that, if you're not getting length, because we talked about it yesterday that there's a big trend, especially with relievers, that if you're seeing them 3-4 times in a postseason series, they're gonna get hit. That's just
Yeah.
how it works.
Absolutely. And speaking of the relievers, a 6.75 ERA
Which
in
seems low.
32 innings pitched. The bullpen pitched 32 innings. The starters pitched 20. But again, you're counting Senga. It's not counting David Peterson's bulk in game one. But still, it's
I feel like you could just throw out game one, just because that was such like
right.
a. But even then, you can't throw out game one because it happened.
Yeah. And then the biggest contributor, 42 walks.
That's 8 a game.
42 walks. It was an issue earlier in the season, kind of got masked as the season went on, and it came back to bite him.
Fact checking myself. That's 7 a game.
You're,
That's
you're not
wild.
going to win. You're not going to win like that. Um, but that's just the nature of this pitching staff.
Because you
They
can
have
count as the
this.
microcosm of that.
Right. They have good stuff, but their stuff relies on chase. You rely on chase, you're pitching out of the zone. You face a team that does not chase, you walk the world. So that's it right there. That's the series right there. 42 walks, leading to a 7.10 ERA as a whole for the pitching staff. Pitching never gave the offense a chance. In the 2 games they won, they had to score 10 plus runs.
What was it, 7-12?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It was 7 in game 2, 12 in game 5. You can't live like that. Someone had to step up, but again, I think just even the relievers, I think everyone just hit the wall. Everyone hit their limit, and it's unfortunate. But moving on to the offense quickly, they scored 26 runs, which isn't terrible, but they also got shut out twice. So that's 26 runs in 3 games. 2 games you went.
And even then, that's 4 a game when you
Right.
have like a tick over 4 a game. When you have the pitching staff that's not giving you length, and you're going up against either the best or second best lineup in all of baseball.
Right. It's not a way to live, and it came back to bite them. But yeah, just some overall thoughts. They pitched way too scared to Ohtani. I don't even want to look at how many times he walked this series. I understand it's Shohei Ohtani, but you got to go after hitters because every time they walked him, it seemed like Mookie Betts was right there behind him to cash him in. And I said it in a few of the initial reactions after the games. You're giving a very good team more opportunities to score. It wasn't going to work like that. You weren't going to do anything with that.
Especially with Ohtani, that I think the big issue was, especially like Severino, I can kind of get, but especially the lefties. They gotta attack Ohtani, because if you don't attack Ohtani, you have Mookie Betts on deck who mashes lefties. Freddie Freeman, I'm not sure about this year, but I know his career he has reverse splits, right?
He's a good hitter regardless.
He's a good hitter. Like, you can't be going. You can't not attack Ohtani when you're going up against a team that I believe had the highest OPS against lefties in the regular season. So if
Yeah.
you're just gonna give them a free base runner, like, I get it, but that's as weird as it is to say. That's one of your better matchups in the top of that order. So
Yeah.
yes, it's Shohei Ohtani, but it's
Yeah,
we still gotta
you,
attack them.
you got it. But they didn't, and they paid the price for it. The bottom of the Dodgers lineup just completely killed them. Kike Hernandez, fucking Tommy Edman. Where the fuck did he come from? 4 RBI at night last night. But that's just the Mets. They don't get beat by the stars. They get beat by the utility role players.
I will say,
Uh,
in Kike Hernandez's credit, he has always been an incredible postseason hitter.
yeah,
To,
absolutely,
to his
absolutely,
credit, but
yeah. But yeah, like I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that Otani beat the Mets or Mookie Betts did, because they didn't. They didn't. This was Kike Hernandez, Tommy Edman, Max Muncy, not as much as to their level, but
he had that. What
you know,
was it? 13 straight plate appearances, getting on base. I
yeah,
think part of that
exactly.
was part of that against the Padres.
I have no idea.
Whatever. Still, a
Probably.
vast majority of that was against the Mets.
Yeah. Andy Pajes had 2 home runs, but I mean that was in Game 5, so whatever. Uh, yeah, I could be wrong, but I don't feel like this Mets team got beat by the big guys. They got beat by walking the big guys and letting the guys behind them do their thing, and then just they never got the big hit. Last night they had bases loaded twice. Couldn't buy a hit to save their lives.
What was it?
That's just
11
where they
stranded through
crumbled.
6 innings.
Something like that. Something like that.
I have just a couple of numbers that, granted, this for the entire postseason. I couldn't find it where it was just for the Dodger season or series, but looking at everyone's numbers with runners in scoring position, Brandon Nimmo, 795 OPS. Part of that is because everything was singles, but he had 357. Francisco Alvarez, 143
He hit 143.
with runners in scoring position.
Yeah.
He had a 133 on base.
Yeah, he
So
had a
his
really
on
bad
base
postseason.
was lower.
Up until like the last 2 games, he was really bad.
Yeah, he had 2 really good games. So then, like, Marte, he did really good, 357. Mark Vientos, 308. Jose Iglesias, 154. Tyrone Taylor,
Taylor.
091. Pete Alonso,
Yeah.
400, 1533 OPS. And you just look like Lindor, he did his thing. The 1050 OPS. Jesse Winker, who should have been fucking starting all the games,
Yes, that's another thing.
1095.
Yeah, I
Like, just
completely forgot about that.
yeah,
Yeah,
just
Jesse Winker should have never been on the bench. It's something I just completely forgot about. But those lineups they put out in games 3 and 4 were just abysmal,
I don't know how much
especially
it changes,
especially
but
game
it's
4.
still
Exactly.
it's still just the principle of the thing that you're not running out your best, especially against the Dodgers have one lefty in their bullpen. They don't have a lefty starter, and you're not gonna deploy your arguably your best lefty hitter this postseason. Not even
Yeah.
arguably your best lefty hitter this
Arguably your best
postseason.
hitter.
Yeah,
Period. But yeah, to your point, they lost 8-0 and then 10-2 in those games. So how much of a difference that makes, who knows? But still, it's JD Martinez should have never seen the lineup. As much as he helped his team get there, he was not helping them at that point. But yeah, just before I get into just like really looking back on the season, the other thing that frustrates me is just the roster construction as a whole. In hindsight's 2020, Kodai Senga should have never been on this roster. He shouldn't. I understand what they were trying to do. I agreed with it at the time. But you're basically having him do rehab starts in the postseason. He should have never been on the roster. They should have taken Luis Angel Acuna off the roster for Jeff McNeil. He barely appeared. I would argue you can also just take Harrison Bader off the roster. He started one game for some reason. But yeah, just some weird roster construction things, and again, I don't think it makes much of a difference, regardless, because this pitching staff just completely hit a wall. That's really what it comes down to. Like, I want to be upset, and I am. Do I feel like they got completely beat? In a way. But they also beat themselves with the lack of clutch hitting. But I also can't be upset the fact that I feel like I know that this team left everything they had on the field. I think that's what's giving me solace at this time. Is just everybody pitched their heart out and their bodies just couldn't keep up.
I also think it's a thing of, like, people got to realize, like, the Mets, like, they had an outside chance to make the playoffs when the season started. Like, there was a small chance we were like, oh, maybe they get hot at the right time, which they did. No one expected them to get to Game 6 with the Dodgers. Just take out take out what happened in the playoffs. Take out the results of the Dodger series. If I would have told you before the season started that the Mets only signed 1-year deal, they were essentially in a soft kind of like retool year, that they made it to Game 6 against the Dodgers of the ALCS, you would call me an idiot. You'd call me crazy. So I think that
Absolutely.
there definitely should be context that this Mets team, barely anyone had them making the playoffs. I barely had them having a 500 record, even if that. And just, it felt like everything went right for them. It's just that it came down to a thing of, this wasn't a year that ownership was saying they're going to win. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it's just a thing of, they didn't go all in to win, and this is what happens when you weren't expecting to win, so you didn't go all out in building a roster, and that's what happens.
Yeah, I mean, look,
And also,
as much
you're
as
going up against the Dodgers, who spent $1 billion in the offseason, too. So it's not
right,
like you went up against the 84-win Arizona Diamondbacks that have like a $50 million payroll. No, you went up against
right,
a juggernaut, and you saw why they were a juggernaut.
the one seed in the entire postseason,
Exactly. No, best record in baseball, and just...
right, all that. But look, you look at this roster on paper, and yeah, it's a miracle they made it, right? It's a rotation filled with threes and fours. You know, obviously Manaea pitched like an ace down the stretch, but before that, Sean Manaea was like a good 3. Luis Severino was coming off his career worst season. Jose Quintana is a good low 3, high 4. Uh, Kodai Senga was injured. David Peterson's coming off
Hip surgery?
hip surgery. Yeah. You know, this team started with Adrian Hauser in the rotation. This team had a start by Julio Teheran.
I forgot about that.
Jose
Didn't he-
Buto started in the rotation.
Didn't Tehran actually do like solid against the Braves, or did he get blown up?
I think I wouldn't call he got. I don't even know. I don't remember. This
I
was
want
like
to look
April.
now. I'm sorry, I want to look
This was
now.
April. You know, it's. I think my dad put it perfectly this morning to me. It stings because it felt like they were invincible.
Never mind, Tehran
You know,
sucked.
yeah. It felt like this team was invincible, in that it wasn't gonna end. You look back at, this was what, 3 weeks ago. Lindor's home run against the Braves, Alonso's home run against the Brewers to keep the season alive.
Oh my god, get out, ball! Get out, ball!
The one game they lost in Philadelphia, I couldn't even be mad at. They had a huge comeback. Lindor's grand slam, Vientos' grand slam, all the gimmicks, the OMG grimace, and all that. This team felt invincible.
The power of friendship was strong.
It absolutely was, and I think that's the. Look, I said it before the postseason started, and I said it every time they were on the brink. I wasn't going to be upset that they got eliminated. I was going to be upset at the fact that this season is over, and that this team is going to look really different next year. Really different. I mean, you look at the roster, Pete Alonso, free agent. Jesse Winker, free agent. Starling Marte, 1 year left on his deal. Do they try to trade him? Jeff McNeil, 2 years left. Do they try to trade him? JD Martinez, free agent. Jose Iglesias, Harrison Bader, free agent. Sean Manaea, Luis Severino, Jose Quintana, Phil Maton, Ryan Stanek, Ottavino, as
You
much
just
as he.
listed half the roster.
Brooks Raley is a free agent. Drew Smith is a free agent. They were down early because of Tommy John. Like, yeah, I just named half that roster.
I will say the Mets do have one thing going for them, and you could fact check me on this. I believe they have $170 million coming off the books next year.
Yes, they have a crap ton of money coming off the payroll.
They have more money coming off the books than like 10 teams' payrolls combined.
Yeah. I said all those guys that are free agents, but then, Max Scherzer's money comes off the books. Justin Verlander's money comes off the books. So you don't need to pay his player option that didn't
Vest.
Thank you. James McCann's money's off the books. Omar Narvaez's money's off the books.
Is Cano's money up?
You
Was
have
that
a lot
last
of-
year or was that this year?
Yeah, I think that was a year or two ago.
Okay.
But regardless, you have a lot of money coming off the books. Right now, with everything, their payroll for this season, including retained salaries, was $317 million. Looking at it right now for the 2025 roster, as is constructed right now, their payroll is $141 million.
Now, Mets fans may not like me saying this. Do you think it's really going to go that high? Because the way that I'm thinking about it is, yes, Steve Cohen, he could pay as much money as he wants. But this is the prime opportunity to get under the luxury tax just to reset the 3-year mark.
I don't think it's going to be over 300 million.
Because is
But
the first threshold 217 or 234?
I forget.
I can look that up.
But
right now.
I also don't think that the luxury tax is going to be much of a discussion, I guess.
For the year 2025, 241 is the first threshold, I believe.
Okay. But look, they have a lot to play with. That's the thing. I don't think they're going to have a $1 billion offseason like the Dodgers, but David Stearns is going to do what David Stearns does. Again, just look at this year. 1 year. They made it 2 wins away from a World Series. Whatever they do, I have complete faith. And that's something that I think Mets fans should really kind of take into account, that they have a lot of good heads of this organization. David Stearns, obviously, but just at the managing level, Carlos Mendoza. I'm going to talk more about him when we really kind of dive into looking back on the season, but what a year Carlos Mendoza had. Just absolutely incredible. I don't have the words right now to describe my feelings for Mendoza. I think he was an excellent hire, and I'm very glad that it worked out, because he seems like a really good fit.
I want to take my L on that. I'm gonna take my L on that. I thought he would have been a solid manager. I thought he would have just been not necessarily another puppet, but just a guy that didn't really have as much feel, didn't have whatever. But he did a significantly better job than I thought. And people are probably gonna point to certain moves, certain this, that. Guess what? No fucking manager is perfect, now will be. And a lot of the times, if they make the wrong move, it's probably not even their fault, but people just want someone to be mad at.
Absolutely. Sometimes you press all the right buttons and it still blows up in your face.
Yeah.
That's baseball. But enough of the recap. Just What a ride. What a season. You know, it's I am very at peace with how this season went and even with how it ended. It sucked. It absolutely sucked. Um you could hear you could kind of hear it in my voice in the video we posted last night. Um you know, this was the long besides 2015, this was the longest postseason run I've witnessed. You know, I was 3 in 2006. So obviously, I wasn't going to
I mean,
remember
you
anything.
witnessed it, probably.
I witnessed it probably in some capacity, but none that retains up here. Not that a lot does to begin with. But 2015, I was not into the game as much as I was now. But 2022 was the first time they made the playoffs where I was like into it and I was living and dying the entire season. But at the end of that, you know, I was bitter and I was just upset and frustrated. I don't feel like that today. You know, as much as you want to say, like, you know, they weren't supposed to be here and stuff, this was a damn good team. This was the best team in baseball for a good chunk of the season. A good chunk of the season. But they're a team made of spare parts. And spare parts worn out at the end. But I've never felt more connected to a team. I've never had as much fun going to the games. You know, I went to games back in April and May. I went to a game where they got blown out by the Diamondbacks. And I was with my mom. We stayed till the end. In the ninth inning, they scratched out a couple runs, and the few Mets fans that stayed there started a chant. Then a month later, I went to JD Martinez's walk-off against the Marlins that essentially started this run. It was an incredible season, and one that I'm going to look back on very, very fondly. But all good things must come to an end. Not the end we wanted, not the end I anticipated. I thought they had a damn good shot. I think that's what stings the most. Obviously, Justin, you could think about it differently, but if they went past the Dodgers, I thought they could give the Yankees the run for their money.
I went back and forth. Literally, the only thing that I think the Yankees beat them in every area. The only issue was the lefty starters. That was the
Mm-hmm.
only reason I was concerned about playing the Mets. And
Right.
Francisco Lindor is our daddy, but
And they own Garrett Cole.
that's
Garrett
that
Cole's
like
not
it's just a thing
hitting.
of I think they could have given. I still think the Yankees win,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, which
I
I'm
think they
low
pushed
key.
that to like 6, 7 games.
Yeah,
I think for
I'm
a
low
fact.
key happier that the Dodgers
The
won because
Dodgers.
it's a better matchup. And Game 5 on my birthday is at Yankee Stadium,
Yeah.
which ticket prices make me want to shoot myself. But
Yeah. Um. But yeah, that's just another thing that just stings. Is it was a good team. It was a. I still think they had a damn good shot, but you never know when you're gonna come back to this spot, so you can't take it for granted. That's why, as much as they weren't supposed to be here, yada yada, you never know when you're gonna make it back. Everything has to break right sometimes for you to be in this position, and to have it like right there, 2 wins away, it sucks. But it's gonna be a fun off season, I think. Like we mentioned and pointed out, they have a lot of money to play with, a lot of money coming off the books, a lot of spots to fill, a lot of question marks to answer, and we're gonna cover it all.
I was just gonna say, doing content for the Triboro Sports Show covering the Jets and watching the Mets game at the same time made me very sad. It was not a
Yeah.
fun night to be making content for the Triboro brand last night.
Yeah. It was tough. It was definitely a tough one. But this was really our first full year. We had a little bit of a stopgap last year over the summer. But this is our first full year covering these teams, and
Guess we gotta do it
today
every
is
year.
October 21st. I am now just talking about the Mets season ending. The Mets don't play this far into October a lot. I hope this year is the start of that changing. So with that being said, Justin, any closing remarks on the 2024 Mets?
I'll get into this when we do the off-season preview and kind of the just plans for the off-season. But I think the big issue is lack of star power. I
Mm-hmm.
think especially in the pitching staff. I think that if they had one or two more stars, that this is a complete. You're looking at the season very differently. You're at least looking at it with a pennant. I think, especially in that starting rotation.
That's fair. From 0-5 to OMG. What a ride. With that being said, thank you to everyone who followed this season with us. It was a pleasure to recap every series, every breaking news, every roster move, every injury report brought to you by Triboro MD. It was a pleasure and I had a blast. So thank you. If this is your second episode, if you followed us this the entire year, if this is your first episode, thank you. We're not done because we got a World Series to preview for the Yankees, but as far as Queens goes, words cannot express how much this means to me. So thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. As always, make sure to follow us on all of our social media accounts at Triboro Podcast on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok. Follow us on Spotify so you never miss an episode. Subscribe on YouTube so you never miss an episode. And with that being said,
No, you completely forgot
we'll
the
see you in
Triboro
the
Sports
next.
Show.
Oh my goodness! If you
How
can't
could you
get
forget about the
enough of
Triboro
us,
Sports Show?
you can't get enough of us. Wednesdays, 6 to 8 p.m. Triboro Sports Show, 88.7 WNHU, or 88.7 WNHU.org. Links are in the description. We talk things all New York sports. Thank you, 2024 Mets. We'll see you next year.